So we are now discussing the different opinions in Medrash Rabbah, Parshat Bereshis, on what exactly was the Eitz Hadat Tov Me'Ra. What did Adam and Chava partake of? And I'd like to get to a deeper level as not just the difference of opinions and what that tree was, but maybe a sense of what was reality before they ate from the tree and reality now. What are we missing? So let's start from the beginning, and of course we're going to lean heavily on the Yefei Toar, the 16th century commentary on Bereshit Rabbah, because the Medrash alone, it's difficult to actually understand each of the different opinions. So the first opinion is Rab Meir, who says that what they ate was wheat. Now wheat was associated in those days with intelligence, because there's a common saying that if somebody wasn't intelligent, meant he probably didn't eat bread from wheat yet. So this, of course, raises questions. What was God's intention for us not to gain intelligence? God wanted us to be on a lower level, an animal-like level of intelligence, and how could he even command us about not partaking in this tree or that tree when we maybe didn't have the intelligence to process that? And this is a famous question. We will see that Yefei Toar asks this question, but it really comes from Maimonides. It comes from the Guide for Perplexed, and that really will open up some great understanding of this whole subject. Okay, so as I said, the first opinion is wheat. One thing that I believe the Yefei Toar does to address this question that I raised of what did Hashem expect the level of intelligence to be, the Yefei Toar says that really man should have aspired towards the Eitz HaChaim, because that was really even more truth than they had now. But instead thanks to the snake, they were directed towards the Eitz Hadas, and that wasn't truth. It was just sort of mechanics of how things worked. It was not really the truth. And so they had to settle for a sort of different level of understanding that they were before, but not really one that's based in truth. And so it opened up more options to them. It led them to certain desires for pleasure, but it didn't get them at truth. We'll see more about this. The second opinion is that of Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi, who, this is one that's well known, that the forbidden fruit was grapes, because grapes, of course, are associated with wine and drunkenness. And it's interesting, the Yefei Toar rejects this. And he rejects it based on the Ramban, Nachmanides. And why? Because the Ramban says, if you look at the psukim, it really doesn't make sense, because we are told that the snake said to Adam and Chava that we would be like God. And in fact, when God sort of caught them, he said, oh, now you're like Elohim. So what is having more, seeking pleasure, what does that have to do with being like God? And it's interesting, the Ramban says that, so we see that the snake wasn't lying, because God himself said, oh, you're going to be like God. And it's also a different Maimer and Chazal that say that there are three people who told the truth and yet were punished for it. And that is the snake, the Meraglim, and Doeg. So you see that the snake actually told the truth. So since everything is about being like God, it doesn't fit to talk about taiva and desires, because that's not what we mean when we say we want to be like God. So then we come to the third opinion, and that is Rav Abba of Akko, who says that we're talking about the etrog. Now this is interesting. The etrog, on the one hand, we see from the Sukkim that Chava thought that the tree was very beautiful, and that was one of the things that drew her in. And the etrog, of course, is a beautiful tree, but what's beautiful about it, according to the Yefei Toar, the only tree where the bark and the fruit tasted the same. So what is the significance of that? before they ate from the tree, they had a proclivity towards doing the right thing, just like all of nature. Mankind, Adam and Chava were in sync with the rest of nature and generally did the right thing. And as far as good and evil, they were the same. There was nothing drawing them one way or the other. They didn't see a need to choose between good and evil. They just wanted to do the right thing. So since good and evil were the same in their eyes, that was represented by the fact that the bark and the fruit tasted the same. There was no difference between them. Once they ate from the tree, then all of a sudden they started to see, here's good and evil, and I can choose, and I am no longer have a proclivity towards doing the right thing. So that was the difference between before and after partaking from the tree. The last opinion, when we're talking about trees, is the fig tree. And this is very interesting. The Medrash says that the reason it must be the fig tree is because that's what they later clothed themselves with. They remember Adam and Chava, when they discovered they're naked, they made themselves belts that covered their bottom parts, and it was made out of fig tree leaves. And so the Medrash says, after they sinned, no tree wanted to have anything to do with them except the one that sinned with them, and that, of course, is the fig tree. The Yifei Torah takes that to a different level and says the fig actually represents the dangers of philosophy. There's sort of a sweetness of philosophy that entices you to start looking at things differently. It blurs the line between good and evil and rationalizes everything. And when we said before that no other tree would have anything to do with them except the one that sinned with them, this is explained that once you go down the road of philosophy, you get very haughty and you don't need God anymore. And then the only road you can take is the road of philosophy, because everything else sort of is closed to you. The whole Torah perspective becomes closed to you, and the only way forward is to stay in the realm of philosophy. Okay, so those are the four opinions. The last opinion, as I said, is that there is no way to know. And since Adam and all of mankind would be embarrassed if people pointed to some tree and said, that's the one. And even God, we're protecting God's honor because we're all made in the image of God. So what's interesting here, and I'll conclude with this, is that the Yifei Torah brings in the Moreh Nevuchim, the Maimonides' Guide to Perplex, to explain this. See if I can make this connection clear. So the Guide to Perplex says that what you don't understand here is that Adam and Chava were actually on a very high intellectual plane, something very unique that we can't even understand, a very high level of truth. They operated on a level of truth. And what they were actually punished for is that they had to go down from this high level of truth, and they had to adopt and live in a world after they partook of the Eitz HaChaim, of the Eitz HaDas. They had to then live in a world which is the world we live in, where truth is very elusive, right? So they lived beforehand, they knew and experienced the ultimate truth, and now they were in sort of the world that we live in, where truth is, as I said, is very elusive. And therefore, it's such a radical difference that we actually cannot even understand. In other words, we understand the world they ended up in, it's our world, but we can never really understand the world they came from. And that's what we mean when we say that the answer can never be revealed, because we can't even understand where they were on that unique plane of existence of that kind of truth. And so therefore, again, to protect the identity of the tree in order not to embarrass mankind or Adam or God, we will never reveal it. But I think the important thing to take away from all this is that I think we all experience every day, especially now it seems even more pronounced, that truth is so elusive, and so many people are pretending to peddle truth, and that they're really peddling half-truths at best. And now we sort of feel the loss. Wow, can you imagine? We could have been on a level higher than that. I hope you got the sense of loss that I felt when I learned this beautiful Rambam, Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide to Perplexed. Have a great Shabbos.